but we can call the November 8th meeting of the Joint School Board for SAU 44 to order. We'll start with a roll call. Susan Levinson?
Yes.
Kathy Brosnan?
Yes.
Carol Martin?
Yes.
Megan Sabasco?
Yes.
Lori Kilbreth is not here tonight.
She indicated she couldn't make it.
Yes, perfect. Jen Fry, I'm here. Brian Winslow?
Yep.
Amanda Roy?
Yes.
Sarah Carey?
Yes.
All right, next we're moving on to public comments. We have no public to comment. Does anyone have anything they would like to, any members of the board who want to speak? All right, we can move forward then with the approval of our minutes from October 18th.
Did notice on page 4, just seeing the yearly 25, I think should just be DOE.
Yes.
Inserted in there.
Yeah, so last paragraph under report of business administration, it should say Nottingham's DOE 25 instead of yearly 25.
No, ours
No,
was,
ours was the
it
next
came out a couple days
Alright.
later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also was a little concerned in that same paragraph when we were sort of when Mr. Byrne was discussing about looking at the finance reports. That sentence is really vague. The encumbrances need to be reviewed and reconciled towards the year-to-date budget numbers. And I don't know if it just would make sense to add something in there that says, due to the lack of a BA, we are behind in some of the financial recordings or something like that to just sort of make sense of that statement.
And we also did make note that it was the balance as the year to date as well that needed to be updated.
Yep. All right.
And it was me that seconded those motions. Name unknown.
I'm gonna
Megan
try.
Sebastian.
Yes, I'm gonna try as we go through motions to repeat names at the
Okay.
end so that our secretary can catch that.
This was the sentence I had. I had preschool and SAU financial data not up to date, and note that was due to the lack of a BA, and we needed that we would have updates to year to date as well as encumbrance.
Do you think it will suffice if we just add a sentence that says something about the lack of a BA?
Yeah, I do think we should mention that other year to date area though.
Yes.
We're aware of it.
Okay.
We don't want to have it be a surprise. It's not. It's
Okay. Great. Under superintendent's report, personnel report, the second line, it looks like they started to mention the resignation of Debbie Lee, but then stopped, but then mentioned Debbie again down to approve the resignation. So I think we just need to add the resignation of Debbie Lee on that second line. Anything else on page 5?
the Co-Brown Academy hosting their joint meeting, school board meeting.
All right, to note that that's the joint school board retreat.
Well, yeah, I don't think it's, I think it's just really a meeting that they
Yeah.
have with us.
True.
Here's name unknown again.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
it's throughout the whole thing, I think. All right, anything else on page 5? And page 6? We have non-public. I didn't sooner, but I don't think we had non-public last meeting.
No,
Nope.
I think we did.
The minutes are just maybe not here yet.
I think we did. We went into non-public to talk about some
Personnel.
That's right.
issues.
Mhm.
And Carol,
Oh, I made the motion.
motion to enter non-public.
Carol Martin.
Okay, so we're missing those minutes. Anyone want to make a motion to approve the October 18 minutes?
Motion to approve the October 18th meeting.
All right, thank you, Brian. Is there a second?
Second.
And a
Kathy.
second by Kathy Brosnan. All right, and we don't have anyone virtually, so we can just do a show of hands. Everyone in favor? All right, opposed? All right, that passes unanimously.
So when we do get the non-publics, we'll put down when we adjourned in that motion. I assume.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll go.
If I may, if any of the members have non-public, I will review mine, because remember, since it was recorded and we shut it off, I don't know if we have notes from when it came back in. I'll have to go back and look at my joint board. But if anyone else has a copy of them, I can make sure that they get included and I can send them over to the board secretary to make sure that it gets embedded in.
We went in at 7:47 and came out at 8:09, and we adjourned at 8:09.
Mhm.
And it was just no votes, but personnel matters were spoke.
You got it.
Yeah.
All right, and committee reports. Do we have any committees that have met? I know last meeting we were discussing that the auditors were planning to come in November. Do you have a date for that yet?
They're supposed to be starting tomorrow, but I've not had a confirmation yet from Mr. Campo. We have given them some of our student activity accounts, and they've asked for a couple different pieces of information. And I'm working on getting those sent them now.
Great. Thank you. All right. We're zooming. See, we're catching up for my 2 minutes being late. Moving on to our business administrators report.
So I did email the board out the reports that I was able to manage to pull together. I did not have access to the cash flow / treasurer's report. That's something I'm going to be working on, trying to figure out how to do myself for now, or working with the new person that we bring on to be able to complete that information. That was one that I was unable to pull. However, I did pull the information that we had discussed. It does not have a year-to-date 21 to, well, it does have year-to-date 21-22 for the SAU. It also has, it just doesn't have a year ending, as that had already been given out in the past, so I didn't pull that information. If you look, I can go through the pages with you to kind of give you an idea of what it is that we're looking at. I did number the copies that are printed for you, the copies that were scanned to you. I did not number at the time. And I thought about it afterwards, saying maybe I should number them, so I didn't copy them. So the one of 7 is your monthly revenue report. So that is really just looking at the funds coming in from the districts into the SAU, and it's showing where we're at there. Not all of that has been calculated yet. There does talk about a balance to be brought in. I'll have to look at what that is, but that is your monthly revenue. That's your revenue report. That's just showing what each district is responsible for. And I can see that some of the funds have been brought in a second time, and I'm going to try to figure out what that is, because it's showing that there's a year-to-date above what's required right now for Northwood. I'm not quite sure what that is. Some of that, I believe, could be our positions that we pay for out of the grants. So they're coming in out of that grant, and it's looking like it's positive. And I think it might have been miscoded, but I am going to be working towards trying to find out what that is, because we do pay for positions out of the grant through the SAU. We pay for a number of things that come out. So that's currently where we're at there. As you can see, what was required to come in, and then what has come in year to date. It surpasses it by 180,000. So I'll be trying to figure out what that is as I pull these reports today, because I realized we weren't going to get them unless I did. I didn't have a chance to review all of that yet. On page 2 of 7, what you'll see is your monthly expenditures. This is the each subline, or I should say, fund object codes, those are broken down. So this just shows you the overall where we're at. What it's looking like is when I pull this, it appears as though right now, when you're looking at the monthly expenditure throughout the general funds, it shows that we are still running with a large surplus. I do have some updates for that as we move a little further into the next document. This just shows where we're at, and I do know there's a couple different lines that I'm going to want to be reviewing in a little more detail. Once we get through the first initial draft of the budget, we'll be looking more at making sure there's any line adjustments that need to take place. I'll be working with the new BA that I had sent you some information on, our interim, to try to find out and to reconcile why some of these accounts were overdrawn or underdrawn, and to make sure that they're not double drawn, because I'm going to share with you one of the lines that I do know that occurred. It's just how do we fix it? So this just shows you right now that, you know, you do have a rather large amount left, which is because we haven't been paying a BA. That's why there's so much left on that. That's page 2 of 7. Any questions specific on that, and I can try to answer them. I do know that I have a little bit of work to find out why we're over in some spots and under in others, and I'll be working towards that. If we'll move to page 3, if there's no questions, 3 or 7, you will see that we started fixing the encumbrances in year to date. That's not done yet, because we have to go through little by little as we're trying to get things done. And as I said, building the budgets took the lion's share of the time that I had available to work on this, and what the business office had to work on this. So if you do look, I will tell you, I'm happy to know that I have been paid now. As I shared with you before, there was no year to date for my salary. That has been corrected. What was occurring in the past was I was still getting paid for out of the special ed director line, because that was my previous position. So I was getting paid out of that, as was Miss LaValle. So why I say we still have some double billings is because Miss LaValle is still getting paid out of the director line, but she's also, some of her pay had come out of the assistant director line. And it shows that the assistant director line is overdrawn. We know that's not the case. We just have to fix that. So some of these lines, as we start to go through and really look at the year to dates, we're going to get a little closer. But what I will say is this is a much closer representation of what it should be than what it was. So as we look at page 2, it continues that trend, and you can start to see that there are some things that don't have anything drawn off of it. So if you look at page 4, page 2 of this, but page 4 overall, you'll see that the salary for the professional business manager is at 0 because nothing is taken out. And then if you scroll further down, you'll see the contracted interim business manager shows shows where we're currently at for year to date, what's been paid. The balance, why it's overdrawn, is because we didn't budget anything for that. The goal and hope was that we were going to be hiring a full-time business administrator for this year, and that unfortunately didn't pan out. So we're still drawing off of that line and the corresponding lines. We have not yet fixed the bookkeeper's salaries line yet. We know that there's some changes in there, so we're going to be looking at that. There'll be some savings in that as well. There might be a little more use of it because we did have to bring in a consultant or someone back to help us with this. It's not going to take that whole portion, but that's what we have to verify, and we'll be going through that. So when I look at these, I'm feeling a lot more confident in what it is compared to what it was. But we have to go through and really still correct some of this stuff as we move forward, and it's going to take a little bit of time. I was able to do the first pass of the budget with Nottingham last week. I'll be doing the first pass with Northwood this week. Once that's behind us and the initial rush is over, I'll be able to spend a little more time with Mr. Ford, who is our new consultant that we're going to be bringing on, as well as Miss Osborne and the rest of the business department to try to solve some of this. I'm going to do my best forensic accounting hat that I can do to go through and figure some of these out with them. And what that has done is also, what I'll let you know is, I had not had permission before because it was not needed, but I now have permissions to go in and approve reconciling accounts. So what was happening is Mr. Waring would do that in the past. He's not available to do it now. So I will be looking at when we have to do a journal adjustment to fix these lines because some are overdrawn. I will be the one approving them for now because I'm the one who knows the history. So it's going to take me a little bit of time. But my hope would be within 2 months, we get this a little more straightened out. And this kind of has been the trend that we've had to go through, which is typically we don't have our first few reports for the SAU up and running correctly. Just because it's always been a journal entry thing. It's one of the things that we were found in our audits for too. And some of it is just when we first initially set up iVisions, the people who were who had the training with us also left. So trying to fix that method is one of the things that costs us. And it's really because some of it was grant oriented or grant funded, but we're moving in the right direction now. So if there's no questions on 4, I'd move to 5.
Can I ask quick about the computer maintenance agreements, why that's so? Was there a right below the contracted business manager?
Computer.
25205430.
So that's one where we've billed the wrong account or it's been double billed. So what I can explain to you on this is your computer maintenance agreement, that is iVisions. That is all that's pulled out of there. What might have happened is you might have had some of our other computer software, which is a further line up, that was also billed out of that, and it shouldn't be.
Okay.
There's two, so that's why.
Seems like, yeah.
Yeah, that is the overage. Currently, we actually have a surplus in our computer software because we haven't paid for what we originally budgeted for. So we didn't sign an additional agreement. So page 5 of 7 again shows all of your different lines, your encumbrances and your available balance. I know that the available balance, it's because we haven't encumbered everything that we need to. So you do have a larger budget balance right now in this line that will be taken down. Really, as was stated in the previous one, I'm not as much worried about encumbrances and seeing what our overall balance is as much as I am worried about what our year-to-date is, so we can keep track of that better. But I want them to correspond. So if we have a year-to-date, I also wanted to make sure that we can, if we have a clean projection, we can do so. There are certain things that we can do a clear projection of. If we know what the salary is, we also know what the New Hampshire retirement is going to go with that. So we should, and we also know what FICA is going to be. So we should be able to encumber that to get a better final line. That's something we'll work on as we get there. There are other things we're not going to encumber all of it because we don't know what it will be, but things that we do know we should be encumbering. So that brings us to page 6 of 7, if there's no questions on that. So that 6 of 7 is our preschool. So if you're looking at your preschool expenditure report, it's really showing where we're currently at. Most of that is, I'm feeling a little more confident in this one than I was in the SAU one. There's less lines and we were able to adjust it more. What you will see is there's available balance in your child find coordinator and the corresponding lines. The reason of that is we did not replace that position. Ms. LaValle's taken that over. We are doing it a little bit different. As you know, we were able to bring on a school psych / LEA, so a special ed administrator at a savings. So some of these lines won't be used. So there will be some additional monies available. And we'll see what that looks like closer towards the end. But all those corresponding lines for your child find coordinator will not be touched. And I can tell you that for now.
What about the dental insurance for the pre-K? It looks like it's significant. That's like 10 lines down or so.
Yeah, I see that one. I'm not quite sure why that one was so high for dental insurance. I'd have to say that looks like that'd be an error, unless because I'm not quite sure why that's there unless that also incorporated health and it wasn't, if they misbilled it, mislined it, because your health was in here. So let me just double check your health insurance. So that is what it is. If you
Yeah,
look at health
is
insurance,
one.
I think those two got switched.
Mhm.
So your dental, that should be your dental, your health insurance should be your dental, and your dental should be your health insurance.
Great.
Okay, so those two did get switched, and I think that's what, that they got miscoded, because that lines up with what your insurance would be.
Perfect.
Okay. So I'll double check that and look into it, and that will give me a little bit better. But both those numbers should be available either
Mhm.
way, but
Right.
they should be corrected. And then if you look at 7 of 7 is just the final page of your preschool.
Mhm.
Again, this number is looking like there'll be a larger return. A lot of that is because the preschool coordinator is not currently in there, and that was a large portion. We haven't encumbered everything yet. So for instance, what I will tell you is there's $25,000 in this that has not been billed but will be. So if you look at the top, your occupational therapist salary, that line number right there isn't accounted for in this, but all of that will be spent.
Right.
Sometimes that gets spent later because it's a contracted service is how it's used. We bill it back after the other one's been billed, but that is a full cost because that's just a portion of the salary. So in essence, when you take out the OT, you will be removing about $32,000 from that 94. That's going to come out of that. That's one line that I can tell you will completely be taken down, and it just hasn't been accounted for yet. So those are the monthly reports that I was able to pull together for you today. I will tell you, I did not pull the grant reports together because at this point, the 18-19 grants have pretty much closed. They've been reported at each local site as well. And you don't have any other joint grant reports. So I didn't redo what's already been shared with you at the previous meeting, especially because I didn't want to do it wrong and have it conflict with what Mr. Waring had already shared at previous meetings. So what I will do is when we do close out those grants, I'll be sharing them locally, and if needed, I can share them here, but I think it's better just to share the closing of it once we're done, because those are the final ones that are together. You won't need any more at that point, because your 1920s are no longer joined, or that was the last year that was joined, but that one's also closing. That one will end in, we have a week to bill it. It's already closed, but we have a week to bill it and get reimbursed. And I'm working with the business department. I worked on that this morning to get that done because we had a couple that weren't, while they were paid, they weren't billed correctly. They were misnumbered. So we're getting that squared away. So everything will take place on that one. So that is the business administrator's report section. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. What I can try to do is before the next meeting, I will try to get you definitely before the next meeting or at the next meeting, I'll work on getting understanding of how to do the cash flow and treasurer's report. That's not something out of iVision I can pull. That's something that Mr. Waring created. I'll work on doing the same thing for you, or working with Mr. Ford to have it done.
Great. All right, any questions? All right, moving on to the student services report.
Okay, so your student services report is in the packet. And some information at the top about preschool enrollment. Not a lot of changes that have gone on there. We still have openings for both 3 and 4-year-olds, so still shout out to the community. If you have students that are interested in preschool, give me a call. We had our child check clinic last week and we screened 5 children, and there were 3 that were recommended for the full special ed referral process. So that's going on now. In general, our referrals have increased. So we now have a total of 8 referrals open, which is a lot more than we've had even over the past year, which we kind of anticipated once everybody was ready to come back from COVID. So it's here. I will include specifics about referral numbers in each of your individual board reports.
So the 3 that were recommended are not included in the enrollment?
They're not
No,
included
not
in
yet.
enrollment, no. They'll be in your, so the referral numbers I put in your individual board reports, so those will be in there. No changes to the alt ed program enrollment. And then just at the bottom, been really spending a lot of time working on the budgets. I did some professional development and I've been bringing back some of that information to the case manager teams. I've started meeting with the case managers in each building. I've been going to their case manager meetings once a month and doing kind of little doses of PD, not a big presentation or anything, but just to share some of the information that I can bring back from some of the really interesting conferences that I've gone to, and they seem to appreciate that. I've been involved in the stakeholders review of the compliance monitoring system that the DOE is revamping. So that's been very interesting, and they're really changing their focus from like compliance, non-compliance, checking off boxes on a spreadsheet of like what's in the file to more focused on the indicators that are part of the state plan. So I'll have more information about that when they actually finish a first draft of that. And then the last piece is just to let you know that incorporated in your budgets, I did negotiate with EDMS, which is the company that creates the Adori software and the Acuity software. And so typically the Acuity software, that's for 504 plans, the cost is $2,000 for the year, no matter how many seats you use. And I talked to them about the separation and kind of how it's all been going, and they agreed to let both of the districts continue with their own Acuity package for the $1,000 that you're paying now. So they're not going to have each district pay $2,000. They're going to let you keep it at one. So that was nice.
Great.
Yeah, that was great.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, sure. They've been great. EDMS is a really good company to work with, and they've been very responsive to everything that we've needed.
Fantastic.
It's a good relationship.
And one thing I'll pick up on too is because I know there's been a question about special ed software. There is no state 504 software. So this is something that you want to keep because it's our digital record, our archives, but it also creates something that travels with students. Otherwise, you're doing it with Word documents that just isn't as, I won't say it's not as secure, but it's not as secure in the aspect of keeping track of it all.
Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. LaValle. Of course. Move back to you, Mr. Byrne, for the superintendent's report.
Yes, before I do, I don't know, it's up to the board whether or not we have Ms. LaValle stay with us. It's up to the board if they think they might need something for structuring or transition. But otherwise, I think I can take back any questions and we can let her get going. She's got a nice hour drive home, so.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so the first thing that I want to talk about is something that I've shared before, but it's official but not official at the same time. I think Mr. Waring cares about us too much. So and we've established a really good relationship with Mr. Waring. So Mr. Waring has put in his official resignation to me. He had stated one of the reasons he needed to resign was he was feeling as though due to one of the treasurers in the local SAUs, he felt as though his hands were being tied and being able to complete his job appropriately. And some of his work ethics were being called in question. And he just said it just wasn't a relationship that he wanted to continue if he was going to be questioned the way he had been. So he had said that at this point, he felt it was best for him to step away. I will say, but with that being said, as I shared, he really wants to see us be successful. And he's really helping me to try to make sure that I can, be available when I have questions. So he is going to help us if needed. He said his number has not changed. His email has not changed. So if there's things that we need, he will complete them, but he does not want to get in the way of Mr. Ford, and he doesn't want to make it to where we're getting different answers. So he's hoping that Mr. Ford will be able to take on the lion's share, but if there's anything that we need from him, he will be able to do small tasks for us. For instance, even though he said he was going to be done at the end of the month, he came in on Monday. He actually had to take a vacation day from his other job. He came in on Monday and worked the entire day with our staff to make sure they felt more comfortable with what they had to do. It wasn't something he had to do. It wasn't even something that I asked him to do. He came because he knew they needed it. So I do feel as though we still have the relationship with him. If we need certain things, we can, but his time is so limited that he just felt like he couldn't keep up. And he also didn't want to keep butting heads with the treasurer and wasting time on things that needed to get done. So that's where we're currently at with Mr. Waring. In your packet, the board did give me permission to go ahead and bring aboard Mr. Ford. I made sure that he knew that I was going to be sharing his name because, as I said, he was fully employed. I wanted to make sure he was in agreement with everything we did prior to sharing his name in public, so there was no fallback. He said he knew, he spoke to his superintendent, and his superintendent and I had a good conversation about it. So superintendent feels comfortable he'll be able to do everything he needs to do and still what we need him to do because it'll be done on weekends. So I did share with you just the contract that we're going to be working with him on is up to 14 hours. And why he said 14 is he's looking at really trying to do 7 hours each day over the weekend when he can. He said he won't need all of it all the time, but up to 14 at $90 an hour, as we discussed. I did include for you too, just a little bit of his references. I shouldn't say references, his resume. I didn't ask him for references. I didn't feel that it was necessary, but I did ask him for his resume, and he was able to put that together for us. So that was included in your packet. He has been doing some work with us already, and Mr. Stanley was efficient enough to make sure that he has everything that he needs to be in our system and working on it. He's already done some preliminary work. He is most likely going to be coming in and doing stuff on the weekends for us, though, because he said his internet wasn't reliable enough to be able to interface. So he thinks he might be coming in, which is nice because instead of doing a Dropbox type method for paperwork that he needs, we can just set it on one of the desks for him to be able to do. So once he signs this agreement and he signs a disclosure agreement, solely because he's going to have a lot of confidential information, he'll be able to come in and we'll give him a key and passcode so he can get in and do what he needs to do. Then the next part of, if there's no questions on that, the next part are nominations for staff that I have. The nominations are based on our previous conversation that I had shared, but now I want to make formal nominations. I'd like to nominate Janet Carlson for an additional, what we're looking at is 17, an additional 9 hours. So it would be 2 hours a day for 4 days and 1 hour, just because that fit into our schedule. So 9 additional hours a week at $15.75 an hour to take up some of the responsibilities that Miss Lee was doing while she was here. They have started doing some cross training now, so that she'll be able to step in and help the special ed department get things done. And then I would like to nominate Debbie Lee for an additional, or I shouldn't say additional, she's departing for up to 3 hours a day or up to 15 hours a week. To be able to she'll be doing that here and or remote to keep up with all the necessary reporting that's required for the high school and the preschool, as well as some of our transportation things while people are getting trained. And she's been working with the Nottingham's local special ed administrative assistant as well to be able to look at that. So that would be at her current hourly rate of $20.64 an hour. And then the last nomination is for Danielle Doherty. That is a preschool para 1-to-1 at $14.15 an hour. That is, she's already employed. It's an additional 3 hours a week for up to 12 hours, sorry, for 4 days. And that is based on a 1-to-1 need. And that will be billed back to the district that it's required to. So as we pay for it in here, we nominated here, this has been the trend. And then what we do is any costs get billed back to the district when it's 1-to-1. Are there any questions about the nominations?
We think we'll be within budget with all of these.
Yes, we will. Specifically, even though Debbie Lee will be here at her current rate and Janet Carlson will be doing additional hours, Debbie won't be doing the full time that she was doing. So you're going to save on some of her benefits, and Miss Carlson's salary is below and she's working less hours. So we will stay under budget here. And I have no concerns about that. My only concern is that I feel as though we were already thin in the BA office, the budget, the business office. I think we're gonna be thin in the special ed office now. Luckily, we have enough staff that know what we're doing. As I said, it's 15 hours a week now. I think that's all we can ask for Miss Lee. I think she'd give us more if we needed it, but I'm also cautious of her personal and family time, as she'll be working another full-time job. So if anything, I'll ask Ms. Carlson to do a couple more hours if needed, but we'll see where we get from there.
Need a motion? on that?
Yes, please.
Can I just see the names? Motion to approve the nominations of Janet Carlson, Debbie Lee, and Daniel Doherty. Doherty as presented.
Dottie, you're right, it's Dottie. I'm used to Dan Doherty as well. They have a Dan Doherty.
Gotcha.
And
And I know someone with Doherty too, so it caught me. Like, that's not how she spells it.
All right, is there a second for that?
Second.
All right, so motion by Brian Winslow and a second by Kathy Brosnan. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Doesn't matter. We're all there. We're all voted. It is unanimous. So welcome to Miss Carlson, Miss Lee, and well, not welcome, but thanks for coming in a little more, I guess. All right.
Okay, so I have two small things under correspondence that I didn't send out. One is really good news. I got a phone call while we had two other board members in the room, so it was really nice. I got an exciting phone call from Co-Brown. I was very excited because they gave us their rates for next year. So their regular education increase is 2.77%. And their special education increase is 0. They're not going to be, they're not increasing special ed costs. They felt as though right now with the climate that we have, they had to try to do the best they could to keep it level funded to the best that they could. The only thing that this does not count for special ed is paras. So your para costs, I am basing it on a 5% increase for any paras that you're paying for, but the rest of the, per student costs and all those things, they were able to keep through. I did joke with Mr. Smith when he told me, and I said, great, now you got the pressure on us because we're gonna have to try to figure out how to keep it pretty low ourselves. And he laughed. So that was very nice of them to be able to work that out and make sure that they could do that for us. The other part, my correspondence isn't as good, and I'm going to tell the board, I did hear from the DOE that as of right now, the way we've been looking at our adequacy funds based on free and reduced lunch, they were holding us harmless, so to speak, and using our numbers of our last numbers reported prior to the pandemic. They're not going to be doing this year. They're going to be using it at our current rates, which are about 50% lower than what they were before. So both districts are looking at somewhere around 30 students, roughly, less on their adequacy and free and reduced, which then ties to your Title I, which ties to any of the other extenuating circumstances that they might qualify, such as ESL and all those all have to come in. What they told us at the state level when this was shared with us was they'll have a more concrete number on November 15th, an estimate for adequacy. And they're saying if you see your adequacy is much lower than what you anticipated or you had from previous years based on the free and reduced numbers, they would strongly recommend that you speak with your legislators and ask them to do the same thing that they had previously, which is to hold us harmless and look at recalculating those numbers based on the 2020 numbers. The DOE does not have the power to do that, but legislators do. The legislative office has the power. So if we see these numbers, they do recommend that the board speak to their local legislators and say, this is going to have a great impact on us. If you figure, and I'm just using rough numbers, about $3,000 for every student that no longer qualifies under that free and reduced, you're looking at about $90,000 per district that you've lost in that in revenues. That's just a quick math. I'm not going to say that's 100% what it is, but that is about what you're looking at.
Does sorry.
No, go ahead.
So it's the legislative body that makes that decision, but just out of curiosity, a big part of why the numbers are looking low is because school lunches have been free for students this year. And is that a DOE decision or is that a legislative decision?
That's a federal decision
That's a
that the
federal
federal
decision.
government said that they would fund that. And what we have done is we've tried our best to get out ahead of it and say, even though you don't, you're not required to fill out the free and reduced forms to get free lunch, we encourage you to do so. We just, as local boards, you decided that you weren't going to that you were still going to offer the free and reduced lunch to everybody, the free lunch to everybody, because you knew there's a need and that was going to be offset. So a lot of the families, getting used to not having to do it have not filled out that paperwork, which is why it's important that they do. We've put it on our website. We've put it on, we've talked to the local sites about putting it out. Our lunch directors have put it out, so our food service directors have put that out as well. I will mention it here the same way I have at other boards when at Northwood, when I first mentioned this as a potential coming down, is that what parents really need to know is, in addition to the free and reduced lunch, if they qualify, there are additional benefits that are out there for your EBT. So if you qualify for free and reduced, generally speaking, you also get EBT benefits for for food stamps, EBT, and those would be increased. There are other benefits such as free internet services and some supports that could be available to families who qualify. So if you fill that form out, in addition to helping to lower the tax burden on your local communities and make sure the adequacy is coming in to be able to provide the same services, you will personally benefit from this as well. So I strongly encourage that families who qualify or may qualify fill out the forms. So, that's what I have for correspondence. An update on the Stratford separation agreement. I did receive an agreement. I sent some language for the agreement as well as some questions that the lawyer brought out. I do believe the best thing we should do with that is wait till non-public at the end and go under L for legal and really discuss it. I did send it out and I do have hard copies for everybody as well. So we can discuss that at that point. Update on the, unless there's any questions with that, I'll move to the next one. Okay, we can do that. So the update on the SAU building lease, as I had shared, I can't remember if I shared here, where I did confirm with the landlord that he is willing to extend the lease by the 1 month at the same rate we had been paying, which is what we budgeted for. So there's no impact to our budget. It was already budgeted for it. The lease was there's a little miscommunication in there, but he does know we plan on staying through June into July through July, and that's not an issue. He knows that. So we had originally talked about being out at the end of June, and now we've asked to extend it all the way through July, all the way into August 1st, and he has allowed that.
Do we have to re-sign the lease or anything?
He's gonna get me.
I signed it.
He's away on vacation. He said he will get me something in writing. I've asked for that. He will get it to me. Yeah, but at this point I said, as long as we're in agreement, and he said he was, that I wasn't too worried about it. He's due back, I think this week. He was out of state. So, and he took enough time to talk to me on the phone where I said, don't worry about, just get that to me afterwards. So he said he would. So there's that. Frontline software. So we talked about this a couple different times. I did not print it out for everybody, but I do want to give up the updated costs. We talked about the time and attendance, the setup fee. I did share with Nottingham that there's been some changes on the way Frontline does their software costs, and they no longer do a per person because they found that was too complicated. They do a flat rate. It's flat rate for doesn't matter how many users, which does make it a little more expensive for some of the smaller districts, but it also makes it more manageable because they know what their fixed costs are each year. And if you have people moving in and out of the system, there's no adjustments. So what the fixed cost is for the SAU to set it up would be $4,600, which was budgeted, and the annual prorated amount from now to the end of the year would be $4,850 or less, depending on when it officially starts. So the total cost for that would be $9,450. So $9,450 for the total cost to get your time and attendance up. Now, where this becomes a little bit tricky of a situation is that when we talked about it, they originally had stated that there would be no additional setup fee for Nottingham if they chose to keep this software up, or it'd be very minimal. They are not doing that anymore. There's a setup fee for every frontline software, which I did share with the Nottingham board and the transition committee, that they have restructured their setup, and there are setup fees for all of these. So if we were to put this in place, which I still strongly recommend, I know it's an additional cost to Nottingham, which might not get the benefits next year if they choose not to use it. But knowing how short we are, and knowing that, again, we are with yet another contracted BA who isn't able to timeline and do all the management that comes with time cards and digital time cards and crossing out and everything that takes place with our paper copies and our timeframes, I still strongly recommend that we do it. And what I'd be looking for on this case is a motion to approve me, now that we know the last time you made the motion, I could have gone forward with it, but I said I didn't feel like it was in the spirit of what was approved, so I didn't. I did a little more research. The boards have had a chance to talk locally on what the impact would be. So I would be asking for a motion to allow us to move forward with the time and attendance setup and purchase for the SAU and for the local districts.
It's a question, how feasible would it be at the building level to switch mid-year into that system?
They automatically get access to it.
No, I
Oh.
mean like operationally.
So
Or
what
like-
we were told that they got some additional initial training on this prior to putting it into full implementation. I was explained that because it's such an easy setup, because it can be used off phone or computer, it's going to be easier than their time card and it'd be set up. So I did ask about that, and they said the transition should be even easier than what they do with time cards right now, with paper time cards. And they offer, the business department said that someone could come up here if they're really struggling. Mr. Stanley said he'd be more than willing to go to the school and show them how to use the app and or the online version, but there's also a tutorial on how to do it that they can look at and watch on their own. But if there's any questions, Mr. Stanley said he'd be willing to do it. And the business office said if they came here, like individuals were really stuck, they could come here and do it. So I feel like we can get that accomplished pretty quick.
So if we set it up, our teachers and such, our peers will be using it. And then next year we'll have an additional $94.50 roughly.
Next year, Northwood would have $7,350 cost, because it has already been set up for them if they continue to use it. If you decide to continue to use it, your cost will actually be $11,950, because you'll have the annual fee of $7,350 in addition to the one-time setup of $4,600. After that year, you wouldn't have another setup fee, but
It's cheaper this year because it's prorated out, because we didn't start at the beginning of the year.
that's correct. They've been discounting it each time that we go to them because we haven't started it.
So $73.50, and what was budgeted for this year to use?
The 12,000. It was the $11,950 is what was budgeted.
So we would just have to budget more of that. So the thing is that the reason for the additional setup is because we would be out of this building and theoretically Northwood would still be here.
Well, it's set up to SAU 44 is a setup, so it's not even if it's out of here, it's out of the fiscal agent or the organization. So they still,
Another site, if you will.
correct, correct.
For hourly staff or whatever who'll be using Frontline instead of time cards, is there like a central computer that they can use when they first walk in, or how do they get access to it?
Well, most of our schools have more than enough computers for the paraprofessionals to use, but I think if we had to, we could find one. We could find one laptop somewhere where they could go and sign in and get
Okay.
it set up.
Okay.
Again,
They won't be required to use their own like.
No,
device
they
or
will not
something.
be required
Okay.
to use it. They
That's
can
good.
if they choose to, but they won't be required to use their own device if they don't want
Okay.
to put the app on.
Good, great.
And then who would approve their time cards? Like, does that process all stay the same as it is now? It's just
Yeah, it's just more, it's digitally put forward. We put it in process the same way we do with time off, like vacation, I approve the administrator's vacation stuff, but the administrators approve the local building, so it's the same thing, and then I oversee it, so that it would be the same setup.
Make a motion to approve the frontline program as discussed.
I'll second it.
I guess for discussion, my view of it as I'm a strong proponent of having an electronic or digital mechanism to do this. I think for compliance reasons, for efficiency reasons, it's a good thing to do. I don't feel like it necessarily locks us in next year to this program, because we were looking at other options that would potentially offer the same functionality. But it does mean that then our employees will have to learn 2 different systems potentially in a short time period. So that's a drawback. But I do think with the lack of staff, it would make sense to put it in place if we can actually use it this year.
It was also one of the recommendations from the auditors because of that, for the sake of that.
The auditors in our last year's financial reports.
They recommended us do a better job of keeping track of our hourly staff. And I don't know of another way to do a better job than to go digital, where like they had a hard time. They'd have to go through and look and say, who was this initial, who was this? Because one of the other parts is when we do our grants have to be done that way. Some of our grants are paid hourly, and that's really where they saw the most trouble.
All right, any other discussion? All right, all those in favor? Hang on, I gotta count now. All right. All right, all those opposed? All right, and any abstentions? All right, so we have 5 in favor, 2 against, and no abstentions. So that motion passes.
Yeah,
There's 8 of us. All right, let's do this again.
You have 6 in favor.
Okay, that's what I'm missing. 6, okay, 6 in favor. 2 against, no abstentions. So the motion passes. We can move forward with Frontline.
Sounds good. Okay, so for the last thing under my report is SAU office holiday schedule. So typically speaking, for the Christmas break, we get 2 days off at the SAU. Where Christmas falls on Saturday, there has been in the past where they would do a Thursday, Friday. My recommendation and what I want to bring to the board is we would like to close the building on Friday and Monday. If anybody wanted to use some of Thursday, that would be fine, but I want the building open on Thursday because schools are still in session. So I don't want to close the SAU on Thursday. So instead, we would do it on Friday and Monday because Monday the schools won't be in session. So I want to make sure that the building is open when schools are in session. We might have a few people who are not in on that Thursday because of travel or whatever, but the building will be open, so enough of us will be here. So if the board's okay with that, I'm going to let the staff know.
Yeah, that makes good sense.
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
So that is all from my report.
Thank you very much. All right, we're at number 9, other items. Does anyone have anything else?
I do think we should have a quick motion around the lease, just to authorize
Sure.
signature on the addendum, because we really can't sign unless it's, I know we're all in agreement, but
Right, absolutely. All right,
just for that addendum to sign it if it comes.
can we have a motion to? Go ahead.
Motion for the chairs to sign the addendum to the lease as discussed.
Second. All right, thanks, Megan. All right, all those in favor? All right, so that motion passes 8-0. Motion by Brian Winslow, seconded by Megan Sabasco, and it passes 8-0. So Susan and I will take care of the lease addendum when it comes out. Anything else? All right, so now we're moving on to the structuring committee, transition committee updates. As we continue to work towards our pending transition. Does Northwood have any updates, really?
Yeah, sure, I can go. The structuring committee made recommendations to the Northwood board. If you would like, I can, we have a really nice report that Keith McGuigan wrote up, because on the committee, I can just forward that to you guys. It's recommendations for facilities, recommendations for staffing, and our programming and stuff like that. So it's a couple pages, a couple of charts. I can forward that on if you would like, but if you'd like, I can go over the specifics now, but it might just be.
Would it be okay to share that with our transition committee? I think they'd be interested.
Yeah, it's, and the Northwood board heard it, asked questions on it, did not suggest any changes, and asked to start budgeting based on those recommendations. So yeah, I think
Will you be staying here, do you think, or?
the recommendation was to do the single floor at the SAU, to give up this floor and to give up the top floor. So
Great, I think that, is that report on our website?
yeah.
I know we were hoping to put it up there. Okay, great. Great. And Nottingham, do you have an update as well?
Oh gosh. I don't think where to start. As a board, we met with our Board of Selectmen at their last meeting, which was last week. Last week was a whirlwind. So we had a lot of meetings.
Is every day?
Yeah, it's been like, yeah, it's been like that.
So we're still trying to figure out a location. And one of the options is a town-owned building that is in need of repair. Like a while ago was our town offices, so it has office space that can be renovated. So the town is having to put that out for an RFP to see if we could get a proposal to get the work done in the winter or spring, and split the costs. We would have to contribute some. They have some unassigned fund balance that if they encumber it before the end of the year, the calendar year, they have some money available. So that is one of the options. Trying to go what else. We did a demo of one of the software options, and we're doing another one next week, I think. So the Infinite Visions would be the one we're doing next week. So that's part of our discussion was about they'd have a HR module, and then there's a add-on that you can do the time and attendance. So they're giving us some preliminary costs, but we'll be putting an RFP out for that whole package and asking the bidders to break it down by modules so we can kind of pick and choose which modules we want to get. And then we're also doing an RFP for potential modulars as an alternative to the building addition. So we're trying to figure out what we're going for, which is not necessarily transition related, but it's all happening at the same time. And that would potentially include preschool space, either in the addition or the modular. Anything else?
That's about it. I think that's enough.
Yeah.
I think you did want to touch base with this group probably to talk about staffing and kind of how we move forward with that, probably in non-public, but
Sure, yeah.
Our transition committee's meeting basically every other week.
yeah, this will be the 16th and the 30th, and then we'll be switching to, I think, it will be 2 Mondays in December. We'll be looking at the budget and hoping to, I'm going to add that to the 16th. So we can get it back to the 17th meeting. So, since when I get a soft copy of it, it may already be there. I'll get it out to the group.
Anything else? On to future meeting agenda items. I didn't jot anything specific down. What did I miss?
I know that the lease, if it's available.
Yes. Mhm.
um,
Have an update on the audit?
And Stratford separation, hopefully.
All right, so follow up on the lease signing, an audit update, and perhaps the separation agreement with Stratford. All right, our next meeting is scheduled for December 13th.
Last year.
I don't have my calendar yet. All right. Anything else before we go into non-public? All right, can I have a motion to move into our non-public? So moved. Kathy?
Under L.
Yes, I'm sorry, under L and,
You should probably look at A and B.
A
since
and
we're
B,
gonna be talking
yes.
about this.
thank you, moving into non-public. Under RSA 91, A, 3, 2, A, B, and L. So Kathy made that motion.
I'll second.
Brian Winslow is gonna second. All right, all those in favor?